Every federal election, the Conservatives always say, hey, we're going to make a breakthrough in Quebec. Just watch us. We're going to break through in Quebec and we're going to win an overwhelming majority. Well, some of that wishful thinking may actually be in the works and happening on the ground. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Brian Lilley and Lorrie Goldstein. So I say that because we talk to conservative strategists and pollsters and everybody all the time before an election, Brian, and they always say the same thing: Quebec, we're going to make a breakthrough in Quebec. Well, now we see Léger's latest polling showing the Conservatives actually tied with the Bloc in Quebec, something we haven't seen a Conservative victory in the province of Quebec since 1984.
88.
Is there some 1988? Thank you. Thank you. Is there something happening in Quebec that is, showing positive signs for the Conservatives?
This is from a Léger poll done for Post Media. So every month they partner with us and they do a poll. But so far, it's only one showing this. And what we want to look for is see if it's a trend. Nationally, we've seen the trend. Léger has the national numbers: 42% for the Conservatives, 23% for the Liberals, 18% for the NDP. And that's in line with what everybody's been getting for the last several months. If between a 16 and a 22-point lead for the Conservatives, it's in that range. So that trend line is firmly established. Are we going to see other pollsters come out and say, yeah, something is happening in Quebec? In the past few elections, under the current iteration of the Conservative Party, the best they've done is just shy of 25% of the popular vote in Quebec. And I think they got 12 seats that time. So, even at this level, because their vote is so concentrated, we're talking the Quebec City area, the Saguenay, they may not get a bunch of seats. But yeah, every election I hear this: oh, we're going to get 20, we're going to get 25 seats. Even with these numbers, I wouldn't put a lot of stock in that. If it keeps going, then they start looking at winning in areas like Trois-Rivières or the Eastern Townships. They're not going to make a breakthrough in Montreal. I don't see that happening in my lifetime.
Lorrie, again, you've covered more of federal elections than you probably ever care to admit. And again, it comes back to, hey, can we do anything in Quebec? Can we make those inroads? I think Brian's point is an important one in terms of the concentration of the Conservative vote. But nonetheless, these types of numbers are certainly not what the Liberals want to see.
No, and look, as Brian pointed out, with 12 seats, based on even if you discounted Quebec, based on their national numbers, with 12 seats in Quebec, they would be getting a huge majority. The one interesting thing about Quebec to me, I think they are the smartest voters in the country. They understand the politics, they understand what's good for Quebec, and to me, Quebecers tend to hold their fire, and then at the very end, like the polls start to move. The difference this time, in the sense that there might be a Conservative breakthrough, is that the last time there was a breakthrough for a non-Liberal party in Quebec, it was the NDP under Jack Layton. They achieved extraordinary gains, made them the official opposition. This time, I don't think that's going to happen with Jagmeet Singh. And so if that vote that, okay, we don't want the Liberals anymore, they're bad. A lot of the stuff Pierre Poilievre talks about, respecting provinces and stuff, we agree with that. Whether you could get that tsunami of votes at the very end saying, okay, they're looking at the polls, Poilievre and the Conservatives are going to win. We want to have a say in that new government. We think there are things that we do agree with them on. Then you could get that tidal wave of support. I'm not saying that's likely, but I'm saying it is possible.
Brian, let's go out further than the province of Quebec and look at just the regional breakdown, where we've seen traditional Liberal strongholds, say in Atlantic Canada, for example. And they've even, Liberals have enjoyed success out in British Columbia. All of those numbers in every demographic and almost every age group is now looking to vote the Liberals out, looking at the Conservatives, not the NDP.
Yeah.
So is this is again, going with the trends and the consistency of these polls, The Atlantic Canada numbers started turning for the Conservatives, I think almost 6 months ago. Probably is even going to get more solid as the months go on.
It started to boost up for the Conservatives last summer when the carbon tax really kicked in for Atlantic Canadians. They were on a different sort of program than the rest of us, and then they came on board and saw the price of gas shoot up, I think on July 1st, started looking at what it was going to mean for their home heating bills, saw that the Liberals weren't going to adjust, and they started moving towards the Conservatives. The reason that's so big is in 2015, Justin Trudeau and his Liberals took every seat in Atlantic Canada. All 32 went to him, I believe. This past election in 2021, when things were not so great for him, he still got 24 of the 32 seats, and was somewhere in the mid 40s for most of the provinces. Right now, they're down at 29% for the Liberals, and the NDP's down at 16%. The Conservatives are sitting at 50% of the vote in that region. That is a major pickup if the trend holds. The other two that are big for him, Ontario, where they are polling above where Doug Ford polled, and Doug Ford got more than 80 seats. Well, Pierre Poilievre could get more than 80 seats in Ontario. A complete reversal from where things are now, where the Liberals, they got 78. Almost half their caucus in the last election was elected in Ontario. In BC is interesting because last couple of elections, it's been a three-way race, and the parties have gone up and down little bits, but they almost sent the same number of New Democrats, Conservatives, and Liberals last time, and now the Liberals are falling apart in BC. And without BC and those GTA seats, the suburban ones around Toronto, they don't get into power. So, I've heard from some Conservatives saying, they read my column and they said, oh, I'll hold your fire a little bit. Like, we're not going to jump on the Quebec bandwagon because we'll wait and see. But what we really want is pick up in Ontario, in British Columbia. And if that happens, we'll form government.
Lorrie, last word to you. It is important to always put the asterisks on all of these conversations that we're having with respect to polls, because we are way outside of an actual election, because Jagmeet Singh wants his pension to kick in, so he's not going to go till at least late 2025. The polls will tighten, things will change, gaffes will be made, and perspectives will shift. But it doesn't take away from one fundamental thing. The Liberal support that is being lost is not going to the NDP. The Conservatives have maintained a pretty consistent tone, meaning Pierre Poilievre hasn't had big sudden movements. He's made some pronouncements, some policy positions, but they've been pretty even. I don't know what, events always change things, so we can't predict that. But so far, so good in terms of the Conservatives keeping it together.
Yeah, like the what do they call it? The supply and confidence agreement runs out in June of next year. So, and then, you anticipate there might be probably a fall election. But your point is that the Liberal vote that's bleeding is going to the Conservatives disproportionately, not the NDP. So people aren't looking at, if they're mad at the Liberals, they're not looking at the NDP as a viable alternative. How could that possibly be? Well, it's because every time the Liberals introduce something controversial that a lot of the rest of the country doesn't like, Jagmeet Singh goes, we may bring down the government if they don't do this, that, or the other thing. And at the end, they support the government. So, if the NDP are trying to figure out why Canadians who are angry at the Liberals no longer look at them as a viable alternative, a good place to start is, well, you've been supporting them, and you've been keeping them from an election for a couple of years now, and you're going to do it up until. So, that whole routine, that whole shtick, we've all commented on it. You have, Brian has, of you hate these people in the morning, and then you vote the Liberals, and then you vote to keep them in power at night. What's the matter with you? What is your message? So nobody understands what the NDP wants anymore, frankly. And so I do think that if there is a big Conservative victory, it would be good if they had representation in every parts of the country. Because one thing that we overlook now is that the Liberals for a long time haven't been the party of Canada. It's been the party of urban Montreal Toronto, and some major, urban centers across the country. But there are huge swaths of the country where, you could fire a cannon and not hit a Liberal MP's office. So, and I think that means that they are dissociated from concerns. They don't do much for Ontario, right? I mean, now that other than all this money we're putting into EVs, which I'm not sure is a great idea, but they don't do all that much for Ontario, and they just don't understand Western Canada. They just don't get it, and that's not good for the country. So I hope if we do have a Conservative government, I hope it has wide representation, so there are all kinds of voices there. Unlike the Liberals who say, remember when they did the thing on the carbon tax in Atlantic Canada, one of the ministers said, well, if Alberta wants a better deal, they should think about electing more Liberals.
Yeah.
So even Liberals say that if you want influence in a government, you have to have seats in your province for that government. I agree with the Liberals.
Well, let us know what you think in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and go to the TorontoSun.com. You're going to find commentary and coverage there you will not find anywhere else.